Hello. Today we'll talk about how requirements are gathered in Agile. So we will be talking about user stories, personas, story maps, minimum viable product, MMF, acceptance criteria, what is DOR, DOD. So we'll start. So what is personas? So personas are fictitious users. So what we are trying to do here, when we are thinking about our product, we try to imagine who would be the users for our product. And why we want to do this is because we are developing a product for the users. So there would be multiple users and we try to create fictitious characters, give them some names, imagine how a day in their life would be, how they would be spending their weekends, what would be their buying preferences. Let's consider an example of a retail. So if we are thinking about Amazon, so we think about multiple users. So someone who may be a student, another a housewife, one would be a working professional. So and one would be a uh, retired professional. So when all of them are purchasing on Amazon, their preferences are different. And when we are thinking about the personas, we are trying to put ourselves in user shoes and trying to think from their point of view. And that's why we create personas. Ideally, for a product, we see there should be between 5 to 7 personas with different types of personalities, and this is how we try to picture them in our project. So in the project environment, you will see these personas hanging on walls. They are very creatively thinking like what is how is their day spent and what they like to do. Okay. So this is empathy map. So this is one of the technique where we are we are trying to apply this empathy map for our personas. So what we are trying to do here again in empathy map, we are trying to touch base their 5 senses. Like what do our users hear? What do they see? What do they do? So it is like we are trying to find out what are their pain areas, what are their gains, when they would be happy, and what the pain areas of a user we are trying to address through our product. So this is how we are trying to use this empathy map, trying to build our product. So finally, we are building a product for a user. We are trying to think who are the users, what do they think, and that's how that we will try to implement those features in our product. So now coming to a user story. So what is a user story? So those who have worked in waterfall, we know like we used to prepare a lot of documents, and then at the end of requirements phase, we asked the customer to sign it off, and now the requirements are frozen, right? And we assume like okay, now that we know the requirements, the project would be successful, and we will develop a great product. But the study shows the earlier the requirements and design were frozen, the probability of success of a product was less. We are not talking about a project. Maybe whatever we decided to do, we did it in that time frame and we delivered the project. But did it succeed as a product? That's what we are trying to think. So what is it? What we are trying to think is like when we are talking about a product, we really don't know what user wants. Even a user doesn't know what they want. So take an example of BlackBerry was a very it was a very popular phone model at one point in time, but now they stick to that keyboard, right? And at the same time when iPhone they were trying to put in the computer in a phone, and the BlackBerry thought no, this won't work. But now where we are, they maybe actually BlackBerry was just trying to improve their keyboard in a better way, but the entire paradigm of the product shifted. So now and so again, The whatever was required at that time, the touch screen phone, it was a luxury at that time. Now it is a basic. So even if you buy a phone for 5,000, you get a good quality phone which has touch screen. So now it is like we don't know what user wants. The user doesn't know what they want, and now we are trying to gather the requirements for such a product for which we no one knows what exactly the product we are developing. So now how to gather the requirements for such kind of a product, that's what we are trying to do. And that's why we are coming to a user story. So what we are trying to, what is a user story? After all, user story is a description of a feature. If I think of an Amazon website, so what are the features this website is giving us as a user, for the user? And what we are saying, it is a placeholder for conversation. We'll see what exactly it means. And it's a negotiable statement of intent. Now see, that's the difference. Earlier, when in terms of waterfall, we talked about SRS, BRD, FRD, and signing off the requirements. Was one of the most important thing to be done in the project, right? And now instead, what we are saying, it's a negotiable statement of intent. So we intent, the user is trying to, we are trying to do this for the user, but at the same time what we are saying, it is negotiable. We'll see what exactly is required. So just coming to this point, so what are three C's of a user story? So when we talk about a user story three C's, it is card, conversation, and confirmation. So what is a card? So it has actually two meanings. So the user story, when we are writing the requirements, it should be, oh, we will write it on a card. So think of a size of a postcard. Okay. So it will be that small. Why that it would be that small? The answer is the next one, conversation. So we are just noting down, okay, this is the feature we want. But what is more important than writing down the requirement in detail is the conversation that has to happen. So the more importance we are giving to a conversation, talking to a customer or a user to understand what they need. And the third point talks about the confirmation. Here we are talking about the acceptance criteria. So a card, again, another, it has another meaning, like we are giving it as an invitation card for a conversation to happen for the user story. Okay. And so this is the context. So what will card have? A high level description of what user wants. Then conversation has to happen. So we are not writing the user stories as a replacement for the conversation. Discussion is much more important than writing user stories. So why importance is given to the conversation? Okay. Mm, let's say if I write soup or salad and bread, what do you understand? So maybe now at least I've spoken, but if you read it, soup or salad and bread, it has maybe two meanings, soup or salad and bread, or soup or salad and bread. When I'm talking to you, it is giving you some hints what it is. But if I write it down, it may be ambiguous. It is, no matter how clearly we write, still there is a scope for ambiguity. And that's why we are giving importance to conversation. When if you just map back to go back to our agile principles, one of the agile principles where we are giving importance to face-to-face conversations. Why face-to-face conversations? It makes it easier, it's easy to understand. Let's say if you bring a new radio and you get your user manual along with it, right? So now if you just try to read the user manual and try to understand how to operate it, imagine it with someone who knows how to operate it explaining it to you. Okay, what, how to operate it? Maybe the person will tell you in a very simple way, like how to start, stop, what are the main functions required. Everything is written in a user's manual. How many times like we really go and refer user's manual? The same scenario is here. When a developer is writing a code, do you think the developer would be reading every word of a requirements document with the same intent it was written? there are chances as a human tendency, some things will get messed up, some things will have multiple meanings, and the understanding of a developer of the requirements would be poor. It will so that's the reason for why we are giving so much importance for a discussion conversation. And when we are talking about confirmation, it's we are talking about acceptance criteria. Again, why this is so important, writing the acceptance criteria, because we want to know in how much detail we would like to go when we are trying to write any program. Here we are talking about software product development. Okay, so let's consider a simple example of adding two numbers. So I can write that program as simple as just addition of two integers. I can go beyond and write it as addition of maybe decimals. So I'll be using something 12.47 I should be able to add. Maybe I'll go further and say if it is an addition program, but I would like to add two strings. So the name and surname I would like to add. So as a programmer, he needs to understand what are the requirements when he is writing a program, in which detail he needs to go. Because unnecessarily, if he's just adding the program which is not adding some conditions which are not required, it's something like a gold plating. We are wasting our time and effort, whereas we shouldn't miss out some important test cases or test scenarios when we are trying to write a code. So that's why this card conversation and confirmation is important. Why to write on a card? We just want to keep it simple. It is just a reminder for us. Okay, we will be discussing this point. Okay, in our product we want to have these features. We'll have discussion and then write a code. Will definitely we want to have conversation for whatever we have written, and we want to know what should be the acceptance criteria so that we know to what depth we need to go to. So that is the whole intent of our writing a user story. Earlier the signed up requirements was document was saved forever, archived as a project document, whereas for user stories we are saying once they are done we should actually throw it away, just scrap it away. So we are not keeping them for any reference, like whatever we wanted we have already discussed with the user, developed it, showed we have shown it to the user and got a confirmation.